All right, in this video I'm going over the test review questions for Rumpelstiltskin's daughter. Right, number 1 says, explain the characteristics of a fairy tale and a parody. Okay, so that's the first part of this question. Remember, all parts need to be addressed. So you need to explain, hey, what is a fairy tale exactly? What is a parody? Then, how is this story an example of both? So that's the second part you need to address. And then you need to make sure you use examples from the text to explain your answer. Okay, so let me give you an example of that. Characteristics of a fairy tale. Well, on page 276, it says a fairy tale features imaginary characters and takes place long ago. It has a plot with a conflict between good and evil. And then it says a parody is a humorous imitation of another recognizable work. So, fairy tales are stories with imaginary characters that take place long ago and involve good versus evil. This story is an example of a fairy tale because it has imaginary characters such as Rumpelstiltskin. It takes place long ago, and we know that because they're using horse-drawn buggies and things like that in the story. So we can infer that it takes place long ago. And it has a conflict between good and evil, where Hope, Rumpelstiltskin's daughter, represents good, and the king represents evil. Okay. And then use examples from the text to explain your answer. Well, I've already used some examples from the text. I mentioned the fact that they are riding around in horse-drawn carriages to exemplify the fact that they are in a time long ago. And I need to also address the fact that it's a parody. How do I know it's a parody? Well, this is very similar to the story of Rumpelstiltskin. So it's an imitation of another piece of work. Everybody's familiar with the story, the Rumpelstiltskin, but it's a parody because it kind of takes that story and puts a fun little twist on the end where Rumpelstiltskin, in the original, Rumpelstiltskin takes the daughter and disappears, okay, runs away, and then the girl has to figure out what his name is to get her daughter back. But in this one, the girl says, yeah, you can have my daughter. In fact, I kind of like you. Let's get out of here. And so they kind of make it a funny version with a different twist at the end where Rumpelstiltskin's daughter grows up and runs into the king again. So it's kind of a funny version. Think about if you've read, of course, the story of the Three Little Pigs. And then they have the parody, the true story of the Three Little Pigs, where it's an imitation of that work, but they put a funny twist on it by telling it from the perspective of the wolf. All right, let's go on to number 2. What makes Rumpelstiltskin's daughter successful at solving problems she faces? So here's one part of the question. And then I also need to use examples from the text to explain my answer. Okay, so I need to address both parts. What makes her successful at solving problems she faces? Well, she's creative in solving her problems, and she shows intelligence in solving her problems. So, and then let's get some examples from the text to support that. Okay, so one thing in the text, it mentions her when she's riding back to the kingdom, she notices that all the villagers, the farmers and stuff, are very poor. So she's insightful, and that's going to help you solve problems if you notice the things around you. And then she's also intelligent in how she can kind of manipulate the king and kind of convince him to do what she wants him to do. For example, in the text, he's saying, hey, how did your grandfather make it? And she kind of pauses and says, well, there's one thing I'm sure of. He didn't spin the gold, he grew it. And she says that on page 283. So this is showing her intelligence and how she solves this problem using her intelligence and using her presence of mind to notice the problems of the villagers. She realizes, hey, they need help being able to grow crops. So I'm going to use this trick. I'm going to tell the king he grew the gold, and that way I can convince the king to give these farmers what they need in order to grow crops. But I'm going to tell him that they're going to be able to grow gold. Okay. And then, of course, you can find some additional characteristics that may make her good at solving problems, and some additional examples from the text as well. Okay, number 3, what is the real first name of Rumpelstiltskin's daughter? That's the first part. And then the second part, how is it important to the theme of the story? Remember, theme from the beginning of the year, theme is what we learn from this story. And remember, theme is never just one word. Okay, it's kind of it's very similar to the moral. What do we learn from this story? So the first name of Rumpelstiltskin's daughter, if we go back at the very end on page 291, it reveals the name. It says, oh, and I forgot to tell you, Rumpelstiltskin's daughter had a name too. It was Hope. And of course, that place, hope, is an important theme in this story, and how how giving people hope that they can change their own circumstances can bring prosperity. Okay, can bring good things, and prosperity. Prosper is one of our vocabulary words this week. Okay. All right, thanks for watching. I hope this helps. But again, if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand.